when my internal dialogue is left unsupervised, she runs right to stress, right to drama, right to negativity, and she's absolutely addicted. Once the awareness is on, that's what I want to hear from you. So, because you use movement and singing, and what are the ways that you recover? That's my curious question.
Yeah, I started accepting boredom, and it was awful. It was fucking awful,
That
Deborah.
was
Like,
cold for me. Yes.
oh my God. I was like, I stopped watching the news. I stopped calling my ex. I stopped getting into fights with my sister. And I would feel the impulse, like the need, the hunger, and I would sit through it, through the shakes,
It's
basically.
profound.
Welcome to the I Don't Believe in Astrology podcast. The podcast is dedicated to conscious souls looking to change the world. Astrologer by day, climate activist by night. Here is your host, Debra Silverman.
Debra Silverman's I Don't Believe in Astrology podcast, welcoming Dr. Scott Lyons, who we don't know each other. I think it's so funny that in this modern day, we jump into cyberspace, we get so close, and then we leave and we never talk again.
We can talk again.
No, we can talk again, but the amount of podcasts and interviews and the amount of exposure we have to each other, this didn't exist when I was growing up. Like, there was no such thing.
It's true. I remember getting an AOL disc when I was a kid and getting so excited because they used to like just send them in the mailbox, and I put it into my computer and it did nothing because I didn't realize you actually had to plug it in. But we've come a long way.
That's so funny. I remember the very first computer that I was gifted by someone who has since passed our world. And it was this, well, first of all, astrology is available on computers, and that entered my ability to do astrology because it's all math. And so to actually execute a chart takes hours, and I didn't have that ability. And my first computer was presented to me in the 70s, which was like a big giant machine that you stuck. Anyways, memories of the way it used to be. So here we are now. I'd love to introduce you. I always ask my interviewee, the person who's doing the I get to introduce you by you giving us whatever you want to say. Like, you can do all that classical, I have a degree and da-da-da-da-da, which is welcomed. And then also just to just describe yourself, give us a little flavor of Dr. Scott Lyons.
All right. Well, my name is Scott Lyons. Some people call me Dr. Scott. And I'm going to start with my favorite ice cream flavor.
Which is?
Mint chip.
Me too.
You too? Kismet. This is kismet.
But I don't eat ice cream, but that's okay.
I don't eat ice cream either. That is my favorite flavor.
Me too.
I can't eat ice cream. But I do. I have made it now with frozen bananas. And that has been also delightful, with like a little vanilla bean, a little mint oil.
And where, so tell us, okay, this is very interesting. I'm glad you had, I mean, your chart is interesting, but that was like random. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, screw my degrees. I think that's the most interesting thing about me, is my favorite ice cream. No, whenever I teach a training, and I'll get into what I teach in a minute, I always start with the question of like, what's your favorite ice cream, or what's your favorite pet? And it's like, it's a silly question, but I actually find it much more accessible, and like, it's that bonding component between humans, which I care about more. Like, do I really care about your ice cream flavor?
No. The ice cream lives in your heart, and the degrees live in your head.
Yeah. You
do have some degrees, and you have made powerful influence on our planet, so don't leave that out.
So my background is I'm a clinical and holistic psychologist. I'm a doctor of osteopathy. My background is in neurodevelopmental therapy, a form of occupational therapy. I have a background also in dance and choreography.
Hey, that's where we're similar. I have a degree in dance therapy.
You do? Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yep, this is where the story gets interesting. My entrance into the world was first through dance. I was a professional dancer my whole childhood, and then became a did a double major in dance and psych. So when I saw that, I was like,
love that.
the embodiment piece. You're
Yeah.
double Cancer. I don't know if you knew that.
Yes. Yeah.
And Cancer's whole thing is physical. Like if they can't touch it and smell it and rub it on their,
I know. I'm a beast of tactile.
Which is why we started with ice. That's why we started
with ice cream.
and
Yeah. I mean, do you know who Bonnie Bainbridge-Cohn is in Body Mind Centering? So she's I think one of the sort of moms of somatics in the West, and was a big influence in dance therapy as well as the historians from like Mary Wigman?
yes.
I mean, I'm trying.
That was me. I was there in the 70s at Harvard.
Wow.
Dance therapy.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm old. I'm old. So, that was literally 1975. I flew off to Harvard to study dance therapy.
I think we know some people in common, which I probably shouldn't mention all their names online.
But it's just interesting. So let's talk about that. So your background, you've got the psychological background, you've got osteopathy, you've got the dancing and the opera. I heard.
Yeah, I used to direct operas.
So we have a double Cancer with Venus and Leo talking about the addiction to drama. That was so funny. Like he's a double Cancer with Venus and Leo, and his whole life's work is our addiction to, I do this.
Yeah. It's addiction to the unnecessary turmoil. It's addiction to the sensation and the sort of relief we get from stress, which is like the weirdest thing that most people would imagine. It's like, wait, stress does something for us? And like just off the bat, like I would say like stress is brilliant in the sense that it offers almost immediate pain relief. It blocks the pain receptors. It helps distract us from underlying, usually emotional things that we're trying to avoid, which is significant. And it gives us energy. So
give
often,
me an example. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Give me an example where stress is a distracting, helpful. Give me one example.
So let's say you have some sad feelings in your chest. When we know that emotions are stored in the body, that we feel them. Anyone who's had a heartbreak can identify that. And so you have this heartbreak, let's say. And it's at a decibel of 6. It's pretty intense. Maybe the breakup was a couple weeks ago. And you go and you tune into the news right now. Enough said. That level of stress response, that activation is at a higher decibel.
I see.
Yes. So it's the same way that like if you go for a really strong run or a workout or a stretch, those things actually mask underlying emotional pain. Because we have this hierarchy in our body of what will be attended to. And emotional pain can easily be overridden by things of higher decibel attention that attract attention, like other pain. And so it's interesting in that way that stress is actually a mechanism for distraction. So so this is why we often will go chase the drama to avoid our trauma. Because being in the tornado of chaos is actually a form of what's called auto-regulation, a form of distraction from the things we can't tolerate or make contact with.
Sense. So in the name of this particular moment in history, or history, I like to call it, where there is such a violent energetic, where I feel like in the zeitgeist, there's this like aversion to even turning on the news, to your point.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So help us, what's the medicine?
What's the antidote to it?
Yes.
That's a great question. I mean, first of all, it's recognizing where we have our own attachment or dependency on stress. And we call that like the mechanism for it is, where are we revving in our life? Where are we unnecessarily creating more challenge, more turmoil, more pain, more intense feelings than what's actually here? And sometimes we can't recognize that, but we can recognize when there's an opportunity for ease or stillness or relaxation, how we are interrupting our own peace. And that's a revving reflex. So those moments when we start to settle, like if we were just to take a minute to breathe, I would get into my dance therapy voice. And there's like an opportunity for some settling. And all of a sudden you feel a little bit of weight release into the chair beneath you. And then you feel like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm thinking about my boss or my ex or the thing I have to do at work that I forgot, or groceries I need to get, or even imagining a fight with someone where it hasn't actually happened. We've all done that. And those are all pulling in all of these different sources, essentially, to fuel the drama fire, to rev ourselves out of that settling. Because what happens in settling is that we become closer or more proximal to ourselves. And when we come closer to ourselves, we come more in proximity to often things we haven't metabolized, the underlying pains and traumas that we have repressed and suppressed or dissociated away from.
Okay, interruption, commercial.
Yeah, commercial break.
Well, I like to translate everything into English because I have this very wild conversation going on about stars. So I'm going to bring it back down. And I also have Mercury in Taurus. My audience knows this about me, that I like things down to practicality.
Yeah.
So I noticed, as the years have gone by, have got more and more and more and more comfortable with stillness. Like now I've been for it. And I noticed that I look around when I live on this island, where can I go where nobody is? Yeah. And when nobody's there, I'm ecstatic. I'm like, I feel like all my aura gets bigger and bigger, and I release, and suddenly I'm like this big giant bird that no one knows. But if a human comes by, I go back to being human. Mm-hmm. And then I absorb what the contraction feeling is, and then I absorb all their energy and so what you're saying is the tendency, and it took me many years to get to the point where I was actually having fun with Debra.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hundreds of years, I'm going to tell the truth. Like lifetimes. So now I'm finally at the era where I'm like, I get to be alone with Debra, and we get to have a party. We get to open up the doors and let all the flags fly, and they're called freak flags, and nobody even notices them. I'm so happy. But what you're saying is the addiction or the distraction or the consumption that we use with our inner dialogue, which is a big part of my conversation, is what takes us out of that ability to face the trauma. That's the first layer, is the trauma, till you get to the real self. There's all this stuff in the way. Isn't that a psychological dream that we have to navigate through that thick stuff?
Absolutely. And the internal dialogue is what we call internal revving. External revving is when we source it from the outside. We go gossip. We go read gossip columns. We go Insta scrolling or doom scrolling. We watch the news. We pick fights with our partners. We get jealous. We do all of these things with external stimuli. Other forms of revving is like what I call creating the bind. So creating the bind is like, my house is a mess. Debra, it's a mess. But if I get a cleaner, that indicates that I'm lazy. But if I don't get a cleaner, my house will never get cleaned, and everyone will think that I'm trashy. And so you can hear how I've created a bind, and I keep cycling in the bind, getting that hit of stress because I can't get out of it. So there's lots of ways we are sourcing material.
The short answer is we're addicted because we don't know how to sustain peace.
Yes, because peace is too vulnerable. Peace
and that's why no one on this planet can figure it out. It's no one's fault. The human brain is not designed for a steady Eddie, calm, reflective, easy, kind, energetic. It's just not. We're built for
and raise your hand, everyone, if you've ever experienced some form of trauma. Yeah, that's pretty much all of us.
And that's the human condition, is my point.
That's the human condition. And so our brain starts to prepare for the next possible threat. We call that hypervigilance. And in the hypervigilance, we're finding...
You're making me nervous.
I'm calling you out?
No, you're just reminding me of the part of me that I have deliberately worked on adjusting so that I could be the calm in the storm.
Yeah. instead of the storm.
And so I'm inviting everyone listening to this as the double Cancer man, Mr. Sensitivity. Is it okay? I'm going to show your chart. That's one of the things that we do.
Sure.
And it's really an opportunity for those that don't believe in astrology. You're just going to see live time. It's so wild how completely, yeah, here you are. We're just going to a little bigger. So
look at all those squiggly lines.
So we have Sun is in Cancer, Mercury's in Cancer, Mars is in Cancer, Cancer rising. You have all this influence, which is the feeling body that takes on authenticity. The thing about Cancer is they can't fake it.
No.
Really hard time pretending. And so it makes them all icky. So they have to go straight to the trauma. Like they're asking, are you okay? They're always asking, are you okay? Can I help you? Is there anything I can? So they like to find the trauma and then comfort the person because your moon's in Taurus, which means you had a really nice mom. Did you ever have a mom?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like stable, she was there for you?
Yeah, for quite a long time.
And then what happened?
Age happens, grandkids happen.
Yes, okay, there we go. But and then here's the other thing I find so interesting. You have your whole thing's about drama. You have Venus and Leo, which is you're a visionary about this whole conversation about trauma and drama, which is Venus and Leo. And you bring to it the level of emotional sensitivity that gives us permission to feel. And that's a really big part of your conversation, right?
Oh my gosh. So what you're saying is I couldn't have not written this book.
Tell me about how it started.
It started in my doctoral dissertation. And I wanted to pick a subject. Well, it all started, let me say, my awareness of drama addiction via my own and my family's started way before doing my doctoral work. But I started researching it mostly in my PhD when I was doing my clinical psychology degree. And then turned it into a book after. But, I was in the middle of a massive breakup in my 20s, a divorce. And I was directing operas then. I was working as an artist. And I thought I had this huge capacity for stress. Turns out I had what I would call a tolerance for stress. And capacity and tolerance are two different things. Tolerance belongs to the family of addiction, meaning that we need more to feel more. And I had built up this numbness, this layer of numbness that I continually needed more stress to feel more alive. And so I thought I could hold a lot, but the truth is I needed a lot to keep feeling that sense of aliveness amongst all the dampness in my being, the depression that I grew up in, the sense that I talk about in my book. I used to refer to myself to my family as a walking ghost. I was so dissociated from all my trauma that the moments I felt alive was when I was like picking fights with my sister, calling utility companies to like get my friends' bills lowered, like in arguments at debate club, performing in front of thousands of people as a child actor. All of these things that were high intensity were what gave me a sense of aliveness. I otherwise didn't feel alive. So here, years later, I thought in my 20s, I was like, oh, I can just hold so much stress. I'm so anchored and grounded in this world. Turns out I required more and more stress to feel alive. There's a certain point where I basically OD'd, meaning I passed the threshold so far that I became. Point? It was when I was in grad school. I lost my health insurance because of a mix-up of paperwork. I was directing one of the biggest rock bands in the world. And I can't say their name because I have an NDA. I was in the midst of a divorce, and my social life was a mess, and like all of these things were happening at the same time, and I basically collapsed. And
psychologically or physically?
Physically, I actually went into cardiac distress. So I died for a few minutes and was in a hospital for a week.
Did you have a death experience?
I don't remember. I just remember my mom like trying to wake me up, and then basically a week later I woke up in the hospital. Um I I mean there's only so much we can take, and was taking on and not releasing.
And then how did you recover?
How did I recover from that? It took months, and I was bored, and I had to get used to boredom. And that was actually part of the recovery, is like I didn't have the energy. But what I noticed in the beginning of that recovery, when I was basically just flat out, is when I would talk to my ex, and that was a pretty toxic relationship. And when I would talk to him, I would feel normal again. Or I would get into a fight with my sister and I would feel quote unquote normal again. Or I'd watch Kill Bill and I'd feel normal again, which was like my normal was dysfunction. My normal was this level of toxicity.
That's so classical Cancer. See, this is that's why Cancer is called the victim of the zodiac. They absorb. I mean, they're named after a disease.
That I didn't realize that was actually named after the disease. I just thought it was associated.
We don't know which order it is. Who cares what order it is? The point is, what an association.
Yeah.
For me, I'm so sick. I'm going to die. I need your help, but I don't want to ask for it because, I don't want to be the one that complains all the time, but I complain all the time, but I don't really want. I'm so sorry. I'm complaining all the time. It's like a negative. That's the low road.
Yeah.
The high road is Dalai Lama, double Cancer.
We have the same birthday.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And he's got the same energetic, which is if I could only find peace and come out of the drama. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Leaves his country. He walks across in the middle of the night and never goes back to his temples.
Yeah.
He has no home, double Cancer. He has nowhere to go home to. He moves to a country he doesn't speak the language.
Yeah.
And he has to take home there and he'll never get to go back to his homeland.
Yeah.
That's such a double Cancer nightmare. However, he took the drama and the trauma out of that story and he taught us how to pray and how to do meditation.
Yeah.
I'm imagining it's a similar song. You've been so victimized.
Yeah. I mean, I really, that was part of the journey too. So when I realized that I was feeling normal or better from getting revved back up, I was like, I don't think this is the way I'm going to survive. And I think that I need to really evaluate what the hell is going on in this process. And am I craving this? I must be craving it because I keep doing it, but I didn't realize I was doing it. So I had to like work my way back and go, oh my gosh, I noticed these impulses, these craves, these desires for this hit of stress. Okay, so I'm now able to identify the craving, which means I might have a little space between the craving and getting that hit of the freest, most accessible drug there is, drama. You know?
Oh my God, that's such a good line. That was a really good punch. The freest, most accessible drug there is.
It is. You can manifest it, you can create it, you can seek it, wherever you are.
Do you know how many people I talk to who say, I have this beautiful life, but my internal dialogue is doing this?
Yeah. It's wild. Like I could be in the middle of the desert by myself and still find the drama. It's a super skill. I'll teach it to you someday.
There's a whole bunch of people right now listening to this going, me too. So Me Too movement's happening live time right here with our friend Dr. Scott and Debra Silverman. And we're encouraging you to put attention. We call it the observer in my language, turn on the observer and go, yes, when my internal dialogue is left unsupervised, she runs right to stress, right to drama, right to negativity, and she's absolutely addicted. Once the awareness is on, that's what I want to hear from you. So, because you use movement and singing, and what are the ways that you recover? That's my curious question.
Yeah, I started accepting boredom, and it was awful. It was fucking awful, Debra.
That was cold for me. Yes.
Oh my God. I was like, I stopped watching the news. I stopped calling my ex. I stopped getting into fights with my sister. And I would feel the impulse, like the need, the hunger. And I would sit through it, through the shakes, basically.
It's profound.
And I would feel so bored and worthless. I would feel purposelessness, and I would feel worthless, and all of these things that could feel like kind of tempting me
Nihilism,
on.
existential.
Yeah, all of that shit. And I had to sit through it. And like the spice of life that I had, which was drama, I took it out. Everything tasted bland. Life tasted bland. And I had to sit through the fucking blandness over and over again to then sink beneath it and come into contact with all the deep, dark shit that I was too afraid of to deal with, didn't have the skills, didn't have the resources. And I'd already been a therapist by that point, mind you. So like, and I spent years excavating all the things that I had protected, so profoundly protected.
Oh,
And
devil.
part of that protection was this addiction to drama. I filled the emptiness where I should have been with stress, because at least then I felt more full. But it was a prop. It wasn't really me.
So beautiful. So let's just translate. So if we were really blunt and honest, which is my nature, all of the human nature, the human operating system is built around is entertainment and stimulation and being able to create some kind of and creativity. So the good news is we're starving for stimulation. We love creativity, and we are at worst unconscious drama people who don't understand how to navigate towards peace. Now, we're in a moment in time when we're in shock that we're in cavemen days, where I keep thinking really bombing hospitals. But this is a symptom of exactly what you're saying, unresolved trauma that's sitting in everybody's unconscious. So don't be thinking it's just them. And if I can change and come to peace. So here's a funny question I ask my people. If you weren't talking about this all day, Mr. Drama, Mr. Anti-Drama, what would you be doing?
Oh gosh. Well, I do a lot of other things. I run 5 companies, as one should. No, I have a tech platform, an ed tech platform called the Embody Lab. So it's an online hub for teaching somatic therapies and trauma therapies. And I bring in
say the name again.
The Embody Lab. The Embody
Lab.
The Embody Lab, yeah.
The Embody Lab.
Yeah, and you know, like we have people like Gabor Mate and Peter Levine and Bessel van der Kolk, like the big names of, and we all teach together on my platform, which is a really beautiful.
Okay, I love that. This is about trauma, and the question everyone's thinking: how do they get rid of theirs? So there's that with other companies.
I have a company called Omala, Omala, and it's a product line. So I have a design background, and I love creating, as I'm sure you'll tell me in my chart.
Right.
I can't not be creating. And when I went into academics, I felt that I missed the creative process. So I built this company of products. I created a skincare line that I embedded into a candle. And when you heat up the candle, turn on the candle, basically, you heat the candle, it activates the enzymes in the skincare balm, and you can apply it directly to your skin. I created a thermal. Yeah.
Okay, can we just stop for a minute? The guy's a creative genius. That's Mercury. That your Mercury is sitting on the point of the soul. So your mind is your soul. And your soul is a Cancer mom, dad. It's a embodied provider for people to be healthy and healed. And little chicken soup probably doesn't hurt. I bet you are you a really good cook?
I was.
It's a little busy. 5 companies.
Yeah, it's a little. I like cooking. My partner is a great cook, and I like directing.
Exactly. Okay, then take us. So I like this story. You realize that boredom must be faced, and you land yourself in that, and you then ask hard questions, as a Mercury on the ascendant would do. What is the formula, and what is the code to assist others to get out of here?
So I deconstructed the process of healing by moving through it. And I did a shit ton of research in grad school. I'm like, is this actually a thing? How is it that we all know someone who's addicted to drama, but there's no actual diagnosis or like registered symptoms in the DSM. Like, what the fuck? How do we all know it, but like the academic world does not? So there was a major
Hysteria.
gap.
We could call it hysteric. There is a diagnosis.
But hysteria is actually quite different because
Yeah.
in there it's about attention seeking. And the funny thing is about an addiction to drama is it may seem like on the outside they're seeking attention, but they're sensation seeking. And the attention that they might get, they cannot receive. So even if they feel isolated and alone like they always do, it is a constant. It is one of the symptoms of an addiction to drama is that we never feel people have our back. We feel alone in the world, even when we're with
This
people.
is such a universal sign. I hear it so much because I don't have that feeling ever. I know I've always felt people have my back. But let's just turn to that. This echo of the collective wounding with this particular diagnosis that doesn't get diagnosed. You don't even know you have it.
Yeah.
And it's a habitual built-in system to the operating system that doesn't allow the mind to liberate itself until the observer awareness therapy comes into the story. Mr. Double Cancer, Dr. Double Cancer. So permission to anyone listening to this, you are built, this is my new book. It's that the operating system has a built-in design fault, about 37 of them.
Yeah.
Or it's not your fault. The first line of my book is, it's a setup. You couldn't get it right if you wanted to.
Yeah. That's a great first line.
I know, it's very comforting to know that to all of you. And then you meet a doctor who has got so much appetite with Mercury on his ascendant to break the code. And then he wants to share it with you. And then he has a platform. And then I found him. I don't know how I found you.
I don't know. Tinder?
We have somebody on our team that plays on Tinder and she just passes the things up. But I can see the value of this conversation. Here's one of my funny questions.
Yeah.
What is do you have a feeling about the longevity of our survival as a species? As far as I have a very big fascination with climate crisis. So I'm curious what you.
Yeah. Look, what I'm about to say doesn't have a happy ending.
I'm with you.
I had to write. I'll be very transparent. I wrote the first 2 sections of my book and I handed it in and said I was done. And they said, well, where's the healing section? And I said, there isn't one. And they're like, well, no, that you can't put a book out there as like a doomsday fucking scenario. And I was like, but we are fucked. And they're like, well, you need to be more of a beacon of hope. And I was like, but that doesn't feel authentic. Coming back, I know my sign, Cancer, it has to be authentic. I wrote the 3rd section. I'm really glad I did. I'm glad they forced me to. There are ways that we can fight the good fight. However, when we were younger, Debra, like the conditions that created this very common phenomenon of an addiction to stress, addiction to trauma, was really more isolated. It was really about the family conditions that were being mirrored. It was about early traumas that were being masked and covered up and needing something to distract and to medicate from it. Now, in this high octane media platform that everyone has access to, that is replicating those conditions on a mass scale. Here's the tricky part. So in the late 1980s, there was an economist came out with a phenomenon called an attentional economy. And the attentional economy says that that we're not really, our economy is not really built on money. The most significant commodity is your attention, how we get it and how we maintain it. Brilliant, because it's true. That is what marketing is based on. It's not about selling you. Selling you is easy. What's hard, or what is the effort, is how do we capture and maintain your attention? And here's the really interesting part. They were economists. They were not neuroscientists like I am. So I go, okay, but how do you capture and maintain attention? The most impactful and most successful, in air quotes, way to gain and maintain attention is through a stress response. We don't live in an attentional economy, Laura. We live in a stress economy. That through the mechanism of activating the amygdala, you can capture anyone's attention and maintain it through awe, through anger, through anxiety. And built into that is fear. Now, that is the way our capitalist structure is working. We're not going to change it.
Mr. Cancer, I'm crying.
I know. Oh, here's a hug.
The human condition. You're giving us articulating exactly what's true. And I want to say to my question was, what is your point of view in the long view? You went and gave us a very interesting, I love how your mind works, Mr. Mercury on the ascendant. You were born with Mercury rising right on the horizon when you were born. The planet of thinking was sitting on your soul saying, this life, we're going to go down and be professional thinkers and writers. You're okay. And we'll talk about emotional content because it's in Cancer.
Yeah, that's pretty much all they can do.
Ding, ding, ding. And my point is, whether or not the planet survives as it is, which by the way, it's dated anyway, everything has an expiration date, and our society is violent, and it is really, the have and the have-nots. We are in a major change. However, the emotional wisdom, the ability to deal with calm, to be the voice of reason while it's going down.
Yeah.
That's really what I see your gift is.
Yeah. I mean, because here's the thing. Remember when I described my own tolerance level that had been built? So, and like addiction requires a few things. It requires withdrawal symptoms, aka boredom and anxiety in this case. It requires not recognizing the social impact of attending to the thing that you're dependent on. So it's like, I bulldoze you to get to gossip, to get into the drama. I bring you into my tornado of chaos at any cost because it serves me. That's part of an addiction. I spend a lot of my attention and energy on the thing that I'm dependent on. That in this case, I am attending to the things that rev me. I'm attending to the negative. I'm attending to the thoughts that get me stressed. And I have another component of addiction is a tolerance level. You need more alcohol to get drunk. You need more heroin to get high. You need more stress to get those medicinal, quote unquote, components of stress. The distraction, the energy, and the pain relief. And sometimes fun. Like sometimes stress is just like fun. I mean, like it's entertaining. Drama can be entertaining too. That's another form of distraction. So we as a culture, in this overstimulation that we are constantly in, everyone is competing for your attention. Every single person, every single platform, every single media company, every single brand is competing for your attention at any cost. The cost is your nervous system.
Okay, now
they don't give a shit.
I know. You're so describing our society. So then you agree with me about us being a bad design, that the human brain by design doesn't know how to go to peace without a practice.
I think we would have. I think we just ended up in this place. Yes. I mean, our brains are designed.
No. That was very Cancer. You walked sideways. No.
Our brains are designed.
Excuse me. Reality is what it is. Our society is built upon thousands of years behind us with our grandparents having the same oi.
Well, like, let's say we never had social media. Let's say we never had, like, somewhere along our historic path, we had a time machine that went back and we went, hey, this might not be healthy to work capitalism in this way. Like because we're humans, we could have done that. It could have been a possibility. We just ended up, for a lot of different reasons, in the place we are, which isn't awesome. It isn't awesome because it has a direct effect on our health. There isn't any. There's 5.6 billion people on social media. Go onto your social media right now look through the first 10 scrolls and tell me your body response from just observing that amount. Now, how many times a day are you scrolling? How many moments are you listening to the news? There was a study done after the Boston Marathon bombing in which because as you know, like they replay the traumas on the news, and they do it in certain ways that make you come back between the commercial breaks. Stay tuned. This new fact, and they just replay the same thing. And there was a study done that demonstrated that those who watch the news for a typical amount of time of an hour or more a day after the marathon bombing had greater symptoms of PTSD than those who were at the event themselves. The actual event caused less damage than the repetition of the imagery that is used to capture and maintain your attention. And we say things like, but I need to be informed. But at what cost? And we're so overloaded that we can't actually register the cost of it. That's part of the effects, is when our attention is being pulled away from us to something else, to a brand, to the news, we are less attentive to our feelings and needs, and that is a form of repression, suppression. Shit. So how do I feel about the future? Yeah, I feel okay.
We're going to go through a big transformation. When's the last time you cried?
Yesterday.
Because?
Oh, I had a fight with my partner. Oh, I guess it was this morning. Yeah. Oh, I love a good cry in the shower. Just an old-fashioned like 80s movie cry.
It's so good for you, Mr. Double Cancer.
I also cry a lot in airplanes, as most people do. When they watch movies, you're more emotional on an airplane because of the oxygen levels.
So funny. Okay, here's another question.
Yeah.
If there was something in life that you couldn't live without, what would it be?
You.
That was the sweetest answer. Try again. It didn't work.
Drama.
Good answer.
Yeah. I mean, I still like to be entertained. But something I couldn't live without, probably bone broth. And I really like bone broth. And I would say some type of stimulus. I mean, like, we're not meant to be meditating 24 hours a day. Meditation is preparing us to be able to surf the waves of life, to be here with what is happening. It's not to be in some like fantasy state of like, as we're dealing with crisis. That's just repression, suppression, folks.
Just more
and
the same.
and I know that because I did that shit. Like I when I was going through my total dark night of the soul moment, and I went to my therapist and I was like, this is bullshit. I have been meditating for years. I've been doing yoga for 12 years. And I should be in a better place than I am. This is bullshit. And she just turns to me and she goes, mindfulness, meditation, yoga. What a beautiful place to hide. And I was like, oh, yeah, because I had this idea that I was this stoic creature, that nothing could bother me, and that I could tolerate all the stress in the world, even though it was feeding off of it. And like, that's not actually the adaptability of life. I wasn't in adaptability. I was in dysregulation disguised as the fantasy of this monk.
That's so good. Oh my God, that's so good. What a good way to put it. Okay, last one.
Yeah.
If there was a person who's no longer living,
Mm-hmm.
that you could have a really good conversation with, it could be someone you knew or didn't know, who would you want to talk to?
That's assuming I haven't already.
Yeah, so that's a better way to put it. Someone alive or not alive, who would you say has a, you're fascinated by?
Gosh, I think there's a lot of people actually that I would want to have a conversation with. I had my imaginary friend as a kid was Albert Einstein.
That's one of my favorites.
And I would imagine having conversations with him.
He was Cancer rising.
Was he really?
Yep, he was a feeler. Did you watch Oppenheimer?
No, I think that's beyond my range at the moment of what I want to take in.
It's a brilliant film about Einstein. You get to see him up close and personal. That's what really touched my heart, that film. And knowing that there's mastery, innocent brains like yours, like his. And that's what I want to complete with. The innocence of the mind that says, while I study endlessly and I'm devoted to waking up inside the dream and I want nothing more than to contribute, I know that I don't know. Einstein said it, the more I know, the more I know I don't know. And there's a humility that, because your brain is so exquisite, and the desire for us to start, it is true. It is true. Take the compliment. And the desire for us to be able to see the imprint of what's contributing to our lack of peace. And then to be authentic enough to say, yoga, breathing, chakras, Reiki, all that stuff is great until the crisis happens. And that's when the nervous system must be trained. And that's one of the mindful gifts. And it sounds like you've got some platforms to assist us. Anything you want to share with us before we finish of how we can learn how to calm our nervous system, or what the practices are that you would encourage?
I mean, honestly, there's just so many, but I want to encourage people to take social media pauses, to take news pauses. And I know there's some deep shit going on right now, and it's a privilege to turn it away. But the reality is that I want to remind people is, if we're flooded, we can't be of help to anyone. And so only attune to what your current capacity is. And the more you can register what your capacity is, the more you can metabolize and process what is here. And the more you can metabolize and process what is here, the less you are in suppression, repression, and the less drama you need to come out of that layer of numbness.
And I'm going to finish by saying my medicine single day is walking barefoot, being outside, near the water, near the sun, near the snow, keep making love to the physical plane and letting your body match that, because there's not a greater healer. The greatest hugs I get is from the fresh air, from the ability for me to just let the sun come and kiss me, to be able to walk barefoot. This is so important. The medicine for the nervous system is, obviously, there's a million variations, but nothing tops, to me, Mother Nature.
It's a good one. It is the ultimate co-regulator.
So thank you. This has been a pleasure. I'm so honored. And you and the people in the audience, please look up Dr. It's so cool. Scott Lyons is such an interesting idea that we could let addiction turn into peace. What a nice thought.
Thank you so much for listening. We want to keep this conversation going with you, so please subscribe to our podcast and leave a rating and review to make sure you never miss an episode. Remember, climate activist by day, human by night. Send Debra a DM on Instagram at Debra Silverman Astrology and visit DebraSilvermanAstrology.com. And we're going to leave you like we leave every single episode. Make it your mission to change the world.